Who is the best center forward in CONCACAF? Who's the best 9 that CONCACAF currently has? It seems to be an ongoing debate in recent times, and if you go back to early 2022, no one was even debating it, because at that time, it was Jonathan David. However, time went on, and with the rise of Santi Gimenez and the addition of Folarin Balogun to CONCACAF, along with Jonathan David's current inability to score, the perception has changed. Along with the fact that we still have many other players like Michail from Jamaica, Sheraldo Becker from Suriname, Ricardo Pepi from the United States. So I'm asking you, why don't you rank the top 5 center forwards in CONCACAF right now? And I will give you my ranking and try to elaborate on my selections, but understand that a lot of this is subjective. None of these players are clear. Well, some of them are, but it's much closer than you think. I mean, it's not like CONCACAF has an Erling Haaland that's just clear of all the players. A lot of these picks are debatable. Hi, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to our CONCACAF Best Center Forward video that many have requested, many wanted it, and since we're a democracy and not a dictatorship, we did it. We made the video, and here it is. And as I said, today I want to go through the top 5 center forwards in CONCACAF. However, to me, the debate lies mainly on the top 3. So if you only care about the top 3, you can skip ahead on the video. I'll probably put some timestamps, but I would highly recommend watching the entire thing. There are some important points that will be made prior to the top players. Before we start, make sure to drop a like in this video, because if you don't, gas prices will go up. Yes, Tactical Manager TV's like count has a direct influence on OPEC's decision, and you have the power to bring the gas prices down. So do it for America, or for Mexico, or Canada. I mean, gas prices going down benefits all of us, right? So before we even start my actual ranking, we did a poll here at the channel, and I want to go through that. Obviously, most of the audience we have here are US men's national team fans, so sure, there could be some bias here and there, even though I think most of you are very rational. And here are the poll results. We had a little over 6,000 people voting, which for CONCACAF, it's actually a decent sample size. It's not that little, even though most are Americans, with Balogun being picked as the top center forward in CONCACAF with 56% of the votes. Santi Gimenez came in second with 25% of the votes, and Jonathan David came in third with 17% of the votes. 3% voted saying it was some other player. And the polls don't lie, man. They simply don't. Actually, maybe they do. Why don't we go to my ranking, and in the meantime, you can obviously tell me yours, because that poll doesn't really mean much for this video. So why don't we go to player number 5? So player number 5, or the 5th best center forward in CONCACAF, I actually have Sheraldo Becker, that plays for Suriname and Union Berlin. Some names that to me can't make the cut right now are players like Raul Jimenez, that hasn't been the same ever since he had that horrific head injury a few years ago. He used to be fantastic. I'll go on and say it. Back then, Raul Jimenez was clearly the best center forward in CONCACAF at that time. Another player I could mention is Josh Sargent from the United States, but he's currently injured, and even if he was healthy, I actually would not put him on the top 5 anyway. Along with Henry Martin from Mexico, he wouldn't make the cut either. So I was mainly between Sheraldo Becker and Ricardo Pepi. But right now, to me, it's quite clear that Sheraldo Becker is better than Pepi, even though Pepi probably has a higher ceiling. So as I said, I see Pepi as a higher ceiling player, but I think Becker, who is currently at his prime, is the better player in my opinion. I understand that Sheraldo Becker has been struggling this season in the Bundesliga, and I think a lot of that has to do with Union Berlin's current form. Also, it's not like Pepi is thriving at PSV as well. He has been mainly a backup to Luuk de Jong and getting minutes when most matches are pretty much said and done. Last season, Sheraldo Becker had 11 goals and 7 assists in the Bundesliga, helping Union Berlin qualify to the Champions League, while Ricardo Pepi got 11 goals and 3 assists in the Eredivisie last season. His team got relegated in a weaker league. You see, it's one of those that I'm not really willing to die on this hill. but from what I have seen so far, I have Sheraldo Becker as the current 5th best center forward in CONCACAF. But again, this video is about the best center forward in CONCACAF, so player number 5 is almost irrelevant of a debate right now, unless you think Sheraldo Becker is the best center forward in CONCACAF, which if you do, you are wrong. So now let's go to player number 4. The top 3 is where things get actually spicy. That sounded kind of weird and freaky. So my 4th ranked center forward in CONCACAF might be someone that many will disagree with me, because this guy has never really been a prolific goal scorer, and he is actually quite versatile, being able to play central, out wide, while being effective as well. But he's mainly a center forward these days. Of course, the main job of a center forward is to score goals, but it's not limited to just that. I'm also going to try to be very quick with this one, because what really matters in this video are the top 3. To me, the 4th best center forward in CONCACAF is Michail from West Ham and Jamaica. He's a proven English Premier League veteran, strong, technical, good on the ball, versatile. He also helped West Ham win the Europa Conference League last season, which to them is a pretty big deal. It's just the player profile here. He's a very good player, better than the ones I mentioned previously, but I can't really place him ahead of the other 3 because, you know, center forwards need to score goals and he doesn't score as much as the other guys, even though I think he's much closer than many think. And sure, he's not a 20 goal per season player in the English Premier League, but if he played in any other league in the world, I think he could pull 20 goals a season or be fairly close to that during his prime. He usually performs accordingly with his XG, which is the expected goal stat, and his XGs are usually fairly low. So that could be a bit in regards to his positioning, off the ball movement, or just West Ham as a team currently. I don't know, maybe they just don't create enough goal scoring opportunities for Michail Antonio. I'm trying to explain why his goal scoring ain't super high, because it's not like he's a bad finisher. He's fine. Like last season, he scored 5 goals on a 6.6 XG in the Premier League. So he underperformed it, but not by a lot. The XG is just very low. That's why he didn't score many goals. And this season, in 10 matches, he has a 1 XG, 1 expected goals, and he scored 2. So he's overperforming it by a little bit. Not that it matters. The sample size is low, but you get the point. He doesn't really produce many goal scoring opportunities. I do also want to add that I'm not a stat nerd and I'm not a massive fan of using XGs, but when evaluating a forward and their goal productivity or goal scoring productivity, it is important to also use the XGs. It's not a deciding factor, but it's important. If you don't know what XG is or expected goals, it's just a statistical model to measure how many goals that the player should have scored based on the opportunities he had. That's the oversimplified version, and you should know that for this video. It can help you measure a center forward's efficiency in terms of finishing, know if their performance that season is sustainable, and blah blah blah. So I'll be using expected goals a few times throughout this video, but again, this ranking is mostly subjective and the level of a lot of these players is actually fairly close. So player number 4 is Michail Antonio. Who's player number 3? So to me, the 3rd best center forward in CONCACAF is Jonathan David, the Canadian striker from Lille. At the time of this recording, he's actually the most valuable center forward in CONCACAF according to Transfermarkt, with a market value of 60 million euros. But let's be honest, no one's paying that for him, which is also why he's still stuck at Lille. No one is going to pay 60 million euros for Jonathan David. So David actually did very well the past 3 seasons in the French league in Ligue 1. During his first season, he scored 13 goals. In the second season, he improved to 15 goals. Then last season, which was his 3rd season in the French league, he scored 24 goals, only finishing behind Lacazette and Mbappe as the top goal scorers in the league. And that is when bigger teams started to get interested in, you know, the problem was Lille wanted 40 to 60 million euros and no one wanted to pay that. Now this season, Jonathan David has actually been struggling with just 2 goals scored in 11 matches. Recently, he has even been benched at Lille. So for context, as I said, he scored 2 goals in 11 matches. Balogun has already 3 goals with half the amount of minutes this season while still adjusting to a new team and missing 2 penalty kicks. And look, we are doing a video on who's the best center forward in CONCACAF currently, and due to Jonathan David's current form, I would argue I'm being a bit generous on keeping him in the top 3. But at the same time, form is temporary and he is a quality center forward, and also the bar is very low for CONCACAF. You see, if he was performing like the previous 3 seasons, he would be on the top 2 debate or maybe top 3 debate with Balogun and Santi Gimenez, but he isn't because he hasn't really been great for some time, to be honest. It's not just this season. Maybe not getting a transfer messed up with his head. So I guess it's just poor timing in regards to this video, and perhaps Jonathan David isn't as good as we thought, or maybe he is. I guess time will tell. It could literally just be bad form and he'll bounce back in 1 or 2 months and we're back into debating if he's better than Balogun or Santi Gimenez, but at the time of this recording, I cannot place him ahead of Balogun or Santi Gimenez, so Jonathan David is the 3rd best center forward in CONCACAF. So now, let's debate the top 2, which is between Folarin Balogun from Monaco and Santi Gimenez from Feyenoord. So here are a couple things before we start comparing Balogun and Santi Gimenez. Both of these players are roughly the same age. Santi Gimenez is like 2 or 3 months older, so essentially the same thing. Both of these players also really broke through in Europe last season, in the 2022-2023 season. For that reason, we will be comparing this season right now, which is, still early on, the previous season, and national team performances in 2023. I will try to do a data comparison, use stats, which is tricky because they play for different clubs in a different league, but we'll get to that later on. And we're also going to be talking about the eye test, which is mainly subjective, but it plays a role in our decision here. I also want to make one thing clear. The Eredivisie, the Dutch league, is not better than Ligue 1, the French league. I want to make that crystal clear from the get-go. I know some of you are going to bring up the UEFA rankings, but it's not, for multiple reasons that I won't have the time to dive into in this video, so cut the nonsense. So now we're going to talk about the stats, and we'll start with the 2022-2023 season, and keep in mind, all these stats are league only. We're only talking about league stats. I'll talk a little bit about Europa League and Champions League, but mainly we're comparing the stats that they play for their leagues using FootMob. So let's start with the 2022-2023 season for both of these players, which is the past season. So Santi Gimenez at that time was playing in the Eredivisie for Feyenoord. It was actually his first season for Feyenoord in the Eredivisie. And as I said, we're using FootMob for this. He scored 15 goals. He had a 14.7 expected goal stat, so XG, which is good. It means he scored pretty much as many goals as he was expected to based on the goal scoring opportunities that he had, which means he is an efficient finisher. He's clinical in front of the goal. He also had 2 assists in 1,925 minutes, and he helped Feyenoord win the Eredivisie last season. They won their league. He also scored 5 goals in the Europa League, which, I mean, most of them were in the group stage, but it still counts. He had 1 goal every 128 minutes. He slightly outperformed his XG, which again means he was efficient when it comes to finishing. Now let's talk about Balogun's stats. So Balogun actually scored 21 goals last season in Ligue 1, where he was playing for Reims, not Monaco. He was still playing for Reims, and I probably messed up their name. However, in those 21 goals that he scored, he had a 26.6 expected goal, XG, so he underperformed his XG. Now, he also got 2 assists, and he played 3,011 minutes, and he didn't win any trophies. So he had 1 goal every 143 minutes, which is a bit more than Santi Gimenez, so a bit worse. He underperformed his XG by quite a bit, meaning he wasn't as clinical in front of the goal as Santi Gimenez. However, it means he was making the right runs, finding ways to get goal scoring opportunities, and maybe creating them for himself more than Santi Gimenez. So it's a bit of a trade-off there. One of them is more clinical in front of the goal, while the other one is more capable of creating more goal scoring opportunities. Now let's talk about the current season, the 2023-2024 season, which is still not even halfway through it, but this season, Santi Gimenez has been on fire. Santi Gimenez is still at Feyenoord this season, playing the Dutch league, and he has 13 goals already in only 890 minutes played, which is insane. That is less than 10 games. He also got 3 assists, and his expected goals is 10.5. So he has been outperforming his expected goal stat once again. Not by too much, but enough. He has 1 goal every 68 minutes. Plus, I do want to add the fact that at the time of this recording, he played 1 UEFA Champions League match against Lazio, and he scored a brace. He scored 2 goals. So Santi Gimenez is having a tremendous season and proving once again that in terms of finishing, his goal scoring is tremendous. It's big. He is clinical in front of the goal. Now, Balogun for the 2023-2024 season, he moved from Reims, I think that's the name or how you pronounce it in French, to Monaco. So he's still adjusting to his club, but he hasn't really been bad by any means. He had a lot of ups and downs. So let's talk about his stats. Even though the data is limited, it's still worth mentioning. So far this season, Balogun has 3 goals, and his expected goals for Monaco has been 2.6. So he's not really underperforming his XGs this season. It's pretty much as he should have scored, 2.6 to 3, essentially the same. Of course, not enough data there. We have to see how the season progresses. He also got 1 assist, and he only played 487 minutes because he arrived later in preseason for Monaco and had to, adapt to the club. He has 1 goal every 162 minutes. He did also miss 2 penalty kicks. And to be fair, Santi Gimenez has also missed a few penalty kicks himself. Let's just say they both suck at penalty kicks. I think regardless of where you stand on this debate, if you prefer Balogun or Santi Gimenez, one thing we can all agree is these 2 players should not be taking penalty kicks. Now let's quickly dive into their national team stats for 2023, which again, it has been limited. You don't play that many games for your national team in a year, period. Santi Gimenez in 2023 scored only 2 goals for Mexico in 368 minutes. He did win the Gold Cup, and that was the most notable goal of those 2 that he scored. He scored the game-winning goal against Panama in the final to give El3 the trophy. Now, keep in mind that was a Gold Cup that the United States sent a C or D team, and it probably would have been a different outcome if the United States had sent their best. So for El3, he's averaging in 2023 1 goal every 184 minutes. Now, Balogun in 2023 for the United States, when he committed, he scored already 3 goals for the United States, had 1 assist in 352 minutes. The most notable moment for Balogun was when he scored in the final against Canada in the Nations League, and he helped the United States win the CONCACAF Nations League once again this year in 2023, and he's averaging 1 goal every 117 minutes. So based on all those numbers that I gave you, what can we conclude? I think it was pretty clear that Santi Gimenez is more clinical in front of the goal. He's a better finisher. However, it seems like Balogun is better at creating chances for himself, as their XG per 90 is somewhat similar for both players, but Balogun has produced a higher percentage of Rons's XGs when compared to Santi for Feyenoord, and the Monaco data for Balogun is too limited to actually draw a conclusion. As for the national team data, they both won a trophy, they both scored in the final, but Balogun scored against Canada's best, while Santi Gimenez came off the bench to score against the almighty Panama. Harry Kane's favorite opponent, or actually one of Harry Kane's favorite opponent. He also loves to score against San Marino. But you get the point. It's tougher to score against this Canadian side than it is against Panama. So Balogun has been better for the national team. I don't really think that's debatable. Balogun has established himself with the US men's national team, while Santi Gimenez has been somewhat disappointing for L3 so far, especially when you compare his Mexico performances to the Feyenoord performances. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with their style of play and the players around him, but still, he hasn't been good enough for them, while Balogun has been good for the United States despite Berhalter ball. And trust me, it's really hard to perform as a 9 under Greg Berhalter. Ask almost everyone that has played as a 9 for the US men's national team. So there's no excuses for Santi Gimenez there. Balogun has been better for the national team. I rest my case right there. Now, when using the eye test, the conclusion is that these 2 players are just different types of 9s. Balogun is faster, more mobile, and better off the ball and, in quick transitions. Better in one-on-one situations as well. And he can probably be effective on the wing, while Santi Gimenez can't really play as a winger. He's also more dangerous off the ball and on the ball in most situations besides finishing, which again, it's actually quite important as a forward to be good at finishing. I'm not saying Balogun is bad at finishing, it's just that Santi Gimenez, from a eye test standpoint and a statistical standpoint, he's a better finisher than Balogun. But again, as I said, Santi is a better finisher. So if you have a team that produces a lot of goal-scoring opportunities, Santi might be a better option, as he's more likely to convert those chances. In a team that struggles to create or plays in transition, Balogun is probably the better option. And if you're in a penalty shootout, you'd probably want neither of these 2 players involved at all. With that said, I am going to place Folarin Balogun as the best center forward in CONCACAF and Santi Gimenez as the second one. Because here's the thing, the Eredivisie is a hit or miss league when it comes to exporting players. Lately, they have exported a lot of flops, like a lot, maybe even as many likes as this video has by now because you're trying to bring gas prices down. But understand, Santi Gimenez can be the real deal. Players like Luis Suarez, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, they all played in the Eredivisie, scored a lot of goals, and went on to be successful in the best leagues in the world. But we have seen far too many Eredivisie top goal scorers flop after leaving the league. Because despite being a good league, this is a stat padding league when it comes to players that play in the top 3 or 4 clubs, more than other top leagues in Europe. So I want to quickly use Luuk de Jong that currently plays for PSV as an example. Luuk de Jong dropped 25 goals for 20 in the Eredivisie many years ago. Then he went to Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga and flopped in Germany. Then after that, he flopped in the English Premier League for Newcastle. He came back to the Netherlands, to the Dutch league, to the Eredivisie, and had multiple seasons scoring over 20 goals for PSV. Then he went on to La Liga, and you guessed it, he flopped again. And now he is back at the Eredivisie and doing great this season with PSV, just like Santi Gimenez is doing great for Feyenoord. I guess Josie Altidore, a former US men's national team center forward, is another great example that he scored a ton in the Eredivisie and went on to flop. But it's really not just center forwards that are leaving the Eredivisie and flopping lately. We have players like Donny van de Beek for Manchester United, Anthony for Manchester United. Actually, those players, it might be more of a Manchester United problem. And of course, this can happen to any league in the world. It's just been worse with the Eredivisie guys when it comes to the top 7 or 8 leagues in Europe. But I want to say this once again. With the numbers that Santi is currently putting, he will head to a better league sooner rather than later, and then we'll know his actual level. I will end this episode by saying it is actually probably extremely close between those two and an informed Jonathan David. So it's a bit subjective and could even depend on the playing style you prefer, the team that they're playing for. No one's really clear. As I said, we don't really have an Erling Haaland in CONCACAF that's clearly better than everyone else. So for this ranking, I have Balogun in first, Santi Gimenez in second, and Jonathan David in third. And you can let me know your ranking in the comment section down below. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to drop a like before you go, and also a comment in the comment section. Share this video with your mom, dog, cat, or that person you don't like. And maybe if this video does well, I'll update it a year from now, and we'll see how these players stand and how it changes. Maybe Santi goes to a better team and performs, and then I change my mind, I put him first, or Balogun stands out for Monaco and plays in the Champions League next season. We'll see. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.